Spiritual education in the Himalayas. Childhood is the foundation stone upon which stands the whole life structure. The seed sown in childhood blossoms into the tree of life. The education which is imparted in childhood is more important than the education which is received in colleges and universities. In the process of human growth, proper guidance along with environmental learning is important. The sacred Himalayas. The Himalayan ranges extend over almost 1500 miles in the length, Mount Everest towering upward over 29,000 feet on the border of Nepal and Tibet is the highest of all the mountains in the world. Persians, Indians, Tibetans, and Chinese have all written about the grandeur and beauty of these mountains. The word Himalaya comes from Sanskrit words. Hima means snow and Alaya meaning home. The home of snows. I would like to make you aware that the Himalayas are not merely the home of snow, but that they have also been a stronghold of yogic wisdom and spirituality for millions of people, regardless of their religious beliefs. These ancient and rich traditions still exist there today as these unique mountains continue to whisper their spiritual glory to all who have an ear to hear. I was born and brought up in the valley of the Himalayas. I roamed among them for more than 4.5 decades and was educated by their sages. I met the masters who live and travel there, studied at their feet, and experienced their spiritual wisdom. From the Punjab Himalayas to the Kumayu and Karwal Himalayas, from Nepal to Assam, and from Sikkim to Bhutan and Tibet. I traveled to those forbidden places which are virtually inaccessible to tourists. I climbed to a height of 90,000 to 20,000 feet without the help of an oxygen kit or modern equipment. Many times I did not have food and became unconscious, tired, and sometimes wounded, but always, one way or another, I found help during such occasions. For me, the Himalayas are my spiritual parents, and living there was like living in the lap of mother. She brought me up in her natural environment and inspired me to live a particular style of life. Once, when I was 14 years old, an unknown sage blessed me and gave me a leaf of Bhojapatra, the paper made of bark on which the ancient scriptures were written. On it he inscribed, "Let the world be little with you, let you be on the path of spirituality." It is still in my possession. The love I receive from the sages is like the perennial snows which form the silvery glaciers of the Himalayas and then melt into thousands of streams. When love became the Lord of my life, I became quite fearless and traveled from one cave to another, crossing streams and mountain passes surrounded by snow blanketed peaks. In all conditions, I was cheerful, searching for the hidden sages who preferred to remain unknown. Every breath of my life was enriched with spiritual experiences, which may be difficult for many others to comprehend. That gentle and amiable sage of the Himalayas had only one entrancing them theme: love for nature, love for creatures, and love for the whole. The Himalayan sages taught me the gospel of nature. Then I started listening to the music coming from the blooming flowers, from the songs of the birds, and even from the smallest blade of grass and thorns of the bush. In everything lives the evidence of the beautiful. If one does not learn to listen to the music of nature and appreciate our beauty, then that which impels man to seek love at its fountain may be lost in the remotest antiquity. Do you need psychological analysis to discover in nature the source of so much happiness, of so many songs, dreams, and beauties? This gospel of nature speaks its parables from the glacial streams, the valleys laden with lilies, the forests covered with flowers, and the light of stars. This gospel reveals that emphatic knowledge through which one learns truth and beholds the good in all its majesty and glory. When one learns to hear the music of nature and appreciate our beauty, then his soul moves in harmony with its entire environment. His every movement and every sound will surely then find its due place in human society. The mind of a man should be trained to love nature before he looks through the corridor of his life. Then a revelation comes peeping through with the dawn. The pain and miseries of life disappear with the darkness and the mist when the sun rises. Mortality finds its way in the awareness of immortality. Then a mortal being suffers no more from the pangs and sorrows which death seems to shower upon him. Death has for ages been a constant source of misery, but at death, man learns to become one with the infinite and the eternal. When one learns to appreciate fully the profundity of nature in its simplicity, then thoughts flow spontaneously in response to the appeals of his delicate senses when they come in contact with nature. This soul vibrating experience in its full harmony with the perfect orchestra of melodies and echoes reflects from the sound of the ripple of the Ganges, the gushing of the winds, the rustling of leaves, and the roar of thundering clouds. The light of the self is revealed and all the obstacles are removed. He ascends the top of mountain where he perceives the vast horizon. In the depth of silence is hidden the source of love. The eye of faith alone can unveil and see the illumination of that love. This music resounds in my ears and has become the song of my life. This discovery of the sages binds the whole of humanity in the harmony of the cosmos. Sages are the sources from which mankind receives knowledge and wisdom to behold the light, truth, and beauty which show the path of freedom and happiness to all. They make humanity aware of mere shadows and vain illusions of this world. With their eyes, the unity of the entire universe is placed seen. The truth is hidden by a golden disc. Lord, help us in unveiling so that we can see the truth. The gospel of love, as taught by the Himalayan sages, makes the whole universe aware of the fountainhead of light, life, and beauty. At a young age, I sat at the foot of Mount Kailash and drank the glacial water of Lake Mansarovara. Often I cook the vegetables and root grown by the Mother Nature at Gangotri and Kedarnath. Living in the Himalayan caves was very pleasant, and when I was there, I was in the habit of roaming through the mountains during the day, taking notes in a haphazard manner, and returning to my cave before darkness would fall. My diary is filled with description of my experiences with the sages, yogis, and other spiritual leaders of Himalayas. This is a land where Sandhyavasa was born. Several modern scholars have tried to interpret and translate Sandhyavasa by calling it the twilight language. Actually, the way I was taught this language, it is entirely different from the concept the modern writers have of it. It is a purely yogic language, spoken by only a few fortunate yogis, sages, and adepts. Philosophically and ideally, it is very similar to Sanskrit. For every word of Sandhyavasa flows full of meaning from its root sound. Sandhyavasa can be used only for the discussion of spiritual matters and contains no vocabulary for the business affairs of the world. When the sun waits with the moon, when the day waits with the light, and the when Ida and Pingala equally flow, that union is called Sandhya or Susumna. Susumna is the mother from which womb was born the language Sandhya Bhasa or twilight. During that period of Susumna, the yogi derives the greatest joy that anyone can consciously experience. When such a yogi speaks with other adepts, then they converse in the language which is hard for others to understand. Knowledge of the appropriate way of chanting the Vedic verse is slowly diminishing because the grammar of the Vedas is different from the Sanskrit language. Similarly, the grammar of Sandhya Bhasa is completely based on sounds and is diminishing. As the musicians of classical music can make notes from sounds and their pitches, so the notes can be made from the sounds used in Sandhya Bhasa. It is called the language of Devas. When one sits in the morning and evening on the tops of the mountains, he can see beauty all around. If he is a spiritual man, he can understand how this beauty is an inseparable aspect of Lord, whose attributes are Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. truth, eternity, and beauty. This is the land of devas. In the Himalayas, dawn and twilight are not mere moments created by the rotation of the earth, but have a deep symbolic meaning. Morning, afternoon, evening, and night each have their own beauty which no language can ever describe. Many times a day, the mountains change their colors because the sun is at the service of these mountains. In the morning, they are silvery, at noon, they are golden, and in the evening, they look red. I thought that my own mother was dressing to please me in many different colored saris. Do I have vocabulary to explain this beauty through the language of the lips? It is only the language of the heart in which I can speak, but the words do not roll down through my lips. I can give you only a glimpse of these beautiful mountains. Their beauty is splendid and beyond description. The morning environment in the Himalayas is so calm and serene that it leads an aspirant spontaneously to silence. That is why the people of the Himalayas become meditators. Nature strengthened the schools of meditation. When I lived in my cave, Usha holding the rising sun in the palm would awaken me. Every morning, as though my mother were standing before me, the rays of the sun penetrated gently through the entrance. In the evening, when the weather clears and the sun breaks through the clouds, it seems as though the mighty painter were pouring out millions of colors on the snowy peaks, creating paintings which could never be duplicated by the brushes and colors of tiny fingers of artists. Any art that exists in Tibet, China, India, and Persia has some influence of the Himalayan beauty on it. A few times tried to paint, but I stopped using my brushes because my paintings seemed to be mere scribbles drawn by a child. Beauty remains bound within the limitation of human realms if it is not appreciated hotly. When one becomes aware of the higher level of beauty which projects itself through nature, he becomes a true artist. When an artist becomes aware of the fountain from which arises all beauty, then instead of painting, starts composing poems. The brush and colors do not have access to that finest level of consciousness. Spiritual beauty needs to be expressed on increasingly deeper and more subtle levels. The most ancient travelers of the Himalayas are the clouds which roll gently from the Bay of Bengal. Rising from the ocean, these monsoon clouds travel toward the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, hug them, and return roaring to the plains. Laden with pure snowy waters, they shower their blessings and bestow them upon the soil of India. Kalidasa, a great Sanskrit poet known as the Shakespeare of the East, composed many poems about these clouds. Meghaduta is a solitary example of an excellent collection of these poems. In these poems, Kalidasa used the clouds as messengers to deliver his message to his beloved, who was a captive in the Himalayas. The Ramayana and Mahabharata, famous Indian epics, are full of phrases describing pilgrimages to the Himalayas. Even modern poets of Hindi and Urdu like Prasada and Iqbal could not resist composing poems on the Himalayan beauty. Many Sanskrit poems, such as Mahima Stotra, are sung as though a traveler were going up and coming down from the Himalayas. I also used to compose poems and sing, although I was not a good poet or singer. The classical music of Indian borrowed ragas like Pahari from the melodious tunes sung by the girls from the tops of the mountains. The Himalayan remain replete with mysteries for poets, artists, musicians, and travelers, but they reveal their most important message only to those who are prepared. Mystics only can unveil the real secrets of these wondrous mountains. I used to roam in the mountains with my pet bear, who was very loyal to me. He was fond of me and became very possessive. He wouldn't hurt anyone but would knock down anyone who came near me. I called him Bhola and he was my finest companion during those days. For 11 years he lived near my cave and would always wait for me to come out. My master did not approve of my growing attachment to this pet and used to tease me, calling me a beer charmer. In the morning, carrying a long staff to help him in climbing, I would go to the mountain tops which were 4 to 6 miles from my cave. I had many diary, a few pencils, and the beer vola with me. After the 15th of September, it starts snowing in the Himalayas, but I continued my long walks to the nearby mountain tops, singing the hymns of Divine Mother. Occasionally, the thought would flash in my mind that my life belongs to those who follow our tradition. I did not care for my individuality, but was actually conscious of the tradition of sages which I followed. Even though I broke the discipline many times and became rebellious, I was still forgiven. During those days, many profound psychological and spiritual experiences occurred. Sometimes I felt like a king, but without any burden of the crown on my head. Not having human company or communication brought me great peace and serenity. I realized that nature is very peaceful. She disturbs only those who disturb themselves, but she teaches wisdom to those who admire and appreciate her beauty. This is especially true in Himalayas. Many varieties of flowers are found in abundance in these mountains. Those with a poetic imagination say that viewed from the snow covered mountain peaks, these slopes laden with flowers and flower bed looks like a magnificent vase of flowers, which a fully prepared disciple would reverently present to his Gurudeva. I would sit next to this natural flowers bed and gaze into the sky, searching for their gardener. Among all the flowers grown in the Himalayan valleys, the most beautiful are the lilies and the orchids. Hundreds of varieties of lilies bloom after winter is over and sometimes even before snowfall. There is one variety of lily which is pink and very beautiful. It grows in June and July at a height of 8,000 to 11,000 feet and is found on the banks of the river Rudragaro that joins the Ganges at Gangotri. This same variety of lily also grows under the trees at Bhojabasa. The orchids in the Himalayas are more gorgeous than any other flowers. They grow at a height of 4,000 to 6,000 feet. The heaviest orchid that I ever found was growing on an oak tree and weighed a little less than 1.5 pounds. Some varieties of these orchids can be found in greenhouses a few miles from Kathmandu, Nepal, but many still remain undiscovered by horticulturist. During the blossoming season of orchids, the buds in their natural obstinacy delay blooming and sometimes take 6 to 7 days to open. Orchid flowers are amazingly beautiful and their blooming season lasts for at least 2.5 months. The mountain cacti bloom suddenly in the moonlight night. They are shy to the sun's rays and before the sun rises their petals withdraw their blooming beauty never to bloom again. I know of more than 25 varieties of succulents and cacti in the Himalayas which are used for medicinal purposes. I was told that the Soma creeper comes from the succulent family and grows at the height of 11,000 to 18,000 feet. Among the great variety of flowers in the Himalayas, there are more than 150 varieties of rhododendron. The most striking of these species is blue and white. Pink and red varieties are common, and there is another variety which has multicolored petals. In the summer, sometimes an entire valley is laden with rhododendron flowers. The king of all the Himalayan flowers is Imkala or snow lotus, a very rare flower. One day, as I was wandering through the mountains, I saw a single blue Himkala as big as a success growing from between two rocks and half buried in snow. I started looking at it, and my mind entered into a dialogue with this beautiful snow lotus. I said, "Why are you here all alone? Your beauty is meant to be ordered. You should give yourself to someone before your petals fall and return to the dust." As the breeze blew, It shook and then bent toward me, saying, "Do you think I am lonely being all alone? All alone means all in one." I enjoyed this adds the purity, the shelter of the blue umbrella above. I wanted to pick the flower and considered pulling it out and taking the whole plant to my master. I compared my own life to this lotus and said, like an irresponsible, joyous child, "What will happen to you if I cross your petals?" The lotus replied, "I will be glad, for my fragrance will radiate everywhere and the purpose of my life will be fulfilled." I pulled the lotus out by its roots and took it to my master, but he was not appreciative. He had never liked to use flowers and their fragrance except on a few occasions when he instructed me to collect flowers from the forest for worship. That was the last day that I ever picked a flower. I felt that I had been depriving Mother Nature by snatching her child from her lap. I never picked a flower again. Beauty is to be admired and not to be used, possessed, or destroyed. Aesthetic senses develops when one starts appreciating the beauty of nature. To satisfy and fulfill my desire to be all alone, I wandered here and there, admiring nature just by being with her. Sometimes I would go down to the snowy streams and look at the ripples kicking each other as they moved forward. The rivers and streams running from the tops of the glaciers look like many long locks of the hair. The music created by the streams is quite exhilarating. I would compare the stream of life with these ever flowing streams and watch how a mass of water running toward the ocean would not have a gap. The currents would never turn back, but another mass of water would fill the gap. There was always continuity. Those streams are like the perennial flow of life. For hours, I would watch these snowy streams flowing from the glaciers and waterfalls. Both banks of the streams glittered like silver on moonlight nights. Living in that part of the Himalayas where the Ganges flows, I would stay seated on its rocky banks and gaze at the blue sky and the clear moon, which spelled its light on the sands. I watched the twinkling lights coming from the small homes of the distant villages, and when the clouds parted, I saw the sky glittering with the lamps of the million stars. This grand assembly and long procession of the stars is beyond human imagination. Below on earth, the peaks of the Himalayas silently enjoyed the fear of stars. Some of them seemed as though they were playing hide and seek among the mountain peaks. In all directions, the mountain peaks and snowy streams were illuminated with that milky light emanating from the starry multitude which I remember even today. In the evenings, mist formed a thick white quilt over the Ganges between the two ridges of snowy peaks, and before sunrise, a layer of mist would cover the Ganges like a white blanket. It seemed as though a sleeping serpent were snoring from beneath it.